All right, so here it is. This is my review for the Odyssey. This has been my most anticipated film of the year, so here it is. All right, so starting off, this is a story, of course, that has been passed down. One of the oldest stories in all of history, going back. This goes back to the Greek days. This is Homer, who, of course, did the Iliad, the Odyssey, two of the most famous stories of all time. You know, the Iliad was adapted for, of course, with Troy. You know, over 20 years ago, and then so now we're getting an actually motion picture adaptation of the Odyssey. Now, the Odyssey is, of course, the basis for almost every hero story that has come. Every story been on a long journey, and all the different facets that go along with the Odysseus and Homer's story has been, of course, put in the film throughout all generations to come. I mean, almost every hero film is off of this basis, and so the story itself to actually be brought to the screen and be done by Christopher Nolan, who is, you know, a really proclaimed director, you know, who is known for doing the Dark Knight trilogy along with Tenet, Interstellar, The Prestige, Memento. I mean, the list goes on and on. Even just won Best Picture a few years back with Oppenheimer. I mean, so Christopher Nolan he's a top dog, man, when it comes to directors, and for him to be adapting the Odyssey, I was pretty pumped for it, and so this is by far my most anticipated film of all the films that are scheduled to come out this year. So, you know, I was really excited going into the film. I got a chance to watch it with my brother, which was even cooler. And you know, we have always been huge into the Greek mythology, and so I was always fascinated with this story. And I remember in school, in high school, they showed, of course, the mini series, um, the one that they played. It was like, oh, it was like a Santi something, whatever the guy who is that played Odysseus. And I remember the story just being just and I watched it recently, and I was like, "Oh my god, this thing was so bad." But at the time, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool to be able to see the story on the screen." So I kind of had really high expectations, and I almost had the expectation of that 1997 miniseries. But of course, that miniseries doesn't have the budget that Christopher Nolan has. So I was really excited, and so I had sort of an expectation of going into this film, and and did that expectation get met? I would say for the most part, yes. I actually thought this film was a really good film, even a great film. You know, I haven't got a chance to watch it again, but I just watched it last night. Uh, it was a great film, and there's a lot of things that I felt this Christopher Nolan really hit on the mark. And there's a couple things which if I'm really being nitpicky, I could really dive into some things, that I kind of fell off between the film and the story, that that I grew up being obsessed with. You know, there's some things I can really nitpick about, but I can't look at it like that. You have to look at it from, it was this a great film? Was the acting great? And absolutely, and I'll be honest with you, some of the performances in this I thought were really great. Anne Hathaway in particular, I thought she was phenomenal, for what part she did play. And then of course, Matt Damon playing Odysseus, I think he really hit the mark with playing Odysseus. Now the American accents are going to throw you off a little bit. I know it did for me. Everybody has an American accent. I was expecting it to have people have mixed accents, maybe. Maybe have somebody have a British accent, somebody have that's kind of how they used to do it with those older films. But no, everybody had that. It was an American accent, just dressed up in Greek uniforms and the Greek attire. But no, Robert Pattinson, he plays anything that he is scheduled to play. He does a great job with it. And the sound. Now the sound, I will be honest, for most individuals, if I watch it in a standard theater, well, it's like it's we have a theater over here nearby that's like has reclining seats, and it's usually the full picture. It's really really nice. I don't know the exact format. I'm not into all that, but I thought it looked great. The visuals look great, and then the sound along with it. Now in my theater, the sound was particularly a little bit high for my opinion in certain parts, but overall, I thought that I thought the sound, the score was really good. The action sequences. I know a lot of people nitpick about the action sequences, the camera work with the action sequences, and I do get that for sure. I can definitely understand that perspective, but I thought he did a good job overall with the action sequences that he put in place. Um, Now, the pacing is going to throw some individuals off. The pacing is going to throw you off at first because it does. I'll be honest, it does start real fast. Bam! It starts. It's coming. And so it's jumping from place from this to this to this to this, and so you're trying to, you have to try to catch your footing there. But once you do, you see what Christopher Nolan is trying to do. I was at first I was like, all right, I'm not liking the pacing of this film. In like the first like 30 minutes or so, I'm like, I'm not liking how this is paced at the moment. But then once I understood, kind of, well, the storytelling of it all, and how he's trying to tell the story. I was like, okay. I see it. I see it now. And so I enjoyed it from that perspective. But it will throw you off at first. It will, because it's definitely it jumps. It almost, I'll be honest with you, it almost starts similar to the way Oppenheimer started. Just so just beware of that. But I really don't want to spoil too much. I'll touch on some of the of course the basic parts that everybody knows, but I don't want to spoil it because I do want people to see this film. This film is actually a really good film, really well done. It's definitely the best film of the year so far. I don't think there's anything that's been close to it. It is a really, really good film. Another great Christopher Nolan film. I even got some people seeing it being put in there, even their top three films that he's ever done. I don't know about that. I'm gonna run through the filmography and I'm gonna do a rank here. But from what he just did here recently with Oppenheimer, and then what he did here with the Odyssey, I'm excited for whatever he does next, man. I'm excited for whatever he does next because he's doing these original stories, or he's adapting these great stories and he's bringing them to life, and he's doing a real good job. I'll be honest with you, the two best directors when it comes to doing that are him and then the guy who's doing Dune right now, that Dennis Villeneuve, whatever his name is. I butchered it up, but them two do a great job of taking like great stories and then adapting them and bringing them to their type of storytelling, and they both do a great job about that, and so I'm excited for whatever he does next because this was a really great adaptation of the Odyssey overall. Like I said, there's some things I'm going to nitpick, and I'm going to get into that here in just a minute. I'm going to nitpick about a few things, and just because that's just I have to. I can't. I can't not let things go unnoticed. But overall, this is going to be a great film for most, and some people won't even really notice some of my nitpicks. So, great film. If I had to rate it, and I like to do my ratings from 1 to 10, if I'm being honest, I would give this a 8.8. This is an 8.8 easily. Um, 8.8. That's what I'm going with. 8.8. I want to give it a 9. But it's not when you see some films that are rated 9, Shawshank Redemption, The Godfather, um, you know, it's not there. It's not there. Okay, we're gonna give it an 8.8. All right. Tell me what you guys think of my rating down below in the review. But hey, it's time to get to some of the nitpicks. Okay. So, if I'm being real nitpicky, the part with the Cyclops is going. It's if you're a true fan of the story and you know it through and through, um, the part with the Cyclops, you'll enjoy it from the perspective of what he gave you, right? So the way the Cyclops looks, the kind of the horror, the horror of it all. He did a great job about that. But what happened to the whole point of where he tells him, "Hey, my name is Nobody," and I absolutely, that was one of my favorite parts of that story growing up, But they completely removed that from this movie and kind of just went with the horror suspense of it all. Um, and so that's just a little spoiler. I did spoil it there, for those who are sticking around. But I they went for the horror aspect of it all, and I did understand. Like I said, once I understood what he was doing, okay, it's fine. But at the same time, I'm like, man, you missed some great opportunities there. That's a really cool part of the story. So that would be my first nitpick. Now my second nitpick, nitpick, quick pick. My second nitpick is definitely going to be the part with when it comes to the part with Cersei. Now the part with Cersei that he did do was truly terrifying. It was scary. It was like the body horror of it all. And those who know the story know what I'm talking about. She transforms them into animals, right? And so it was you actually see it, and it's quite cool how Christopher Nolan had put that together. Now, however, the part about the whole thing of Odysseus coming in afterwards to try to find his men, I felt they missed some great opportunities there too, right? One, Hermes comes and visits him, tells him about Cersei, tells him what he's going to have to do, right? And then when he gets there, he has to sleep with her because she's a goddess. He can't deny her. She's intrigued by him, and so he of course he has to do what he has to do what he has to do in that moment, and they completely cut that out, and I get it because I guess maybe the hero they're trying to portray, from Christopher Nolan's story, clear cut, like just good morality, and I do get I get that, so maybe he wanted to cut that part out, but that's also a key part of the story because he was there for 3 years. Um, so that was definitely something that I had to pick about. I had to pick about that, but I did like how Christopher Nolan did it. But if you, like I said, if you grew up with this story, it's gonna throw you off. And then, like I said, the pacing of it all is going to throw you off. Um, there is no Achilles. There is no Achilles in this movie. They don't mention. They mention Achilles, but they don't show any remembrance of him or anything like of that nature. They don't show like a little snippet of them fighting in the Trojan War. Like I said, this is not a Trojan War story. This is a story about Odysseus coming home. Now they do talk about the sack of Troy, and that part is truly phenomenal. I thought they did a great job. You get two separate sequences of the sack on Troy, and I think that's pretty cool. Pretty cool there, and the way they did it was quite awesome. It reminded me almost like Inception a little bit when they were kind of when they were doing their thing, especially in like the end of the movie where they're being stealth like, and I just thought it reminded me very much of that and the way he shot it. But great job there. But the part with Calypso, um, I thought they did a great job there. I thought they did a good job with the overall concept of Calypso, him being there for 7 years, their relationship together, and Charlie Theron, of course, does what she needs to do in her moments in the film, and so that part I thought they hit that on the hat. I thought they did pretty well there. But those other things, other parts of the journey. Oh, and then don't let me forget about the part where he goes to the Giants, right? That part completely threw me off. Now, why did there? The only thing that really threw me off, and I understand, and I when I understood what he was trying to do, tries to keep it PG-13 for sure. But their armor, that and you've seen it in the trailer. Their armor throws me off, man, because that looks like some shit that they wore in, like, the medieval times, right? That looks like some of their armor. Hell, not even maybe the Knight Templar, the Crusade times. So pretty interesting that they were, of course, the boys were strapped up like that. But understood it from his story perspective, and I thought they did an interesting job, and that part was kind of really that part was pretty cool in the way he did it too. But like I said, some of these parts are going to throw you off, especially if you are a true fan of the Odyssey and you grew up with these stories and you love them. Um, so some of this stuff will throw you off, but overall, great adaptation of the Odyssey. Um, I thought they did a really good job. Now, but I know before I go, I will dive into some of the controversy that they did have, and you might find a lot of people the parts don't really play a huge role in the film, just to be honest, right? I think overall, um, Ellie Page has probably maybe 10 minutes of screen time overall, if I'm being honest. And then of course, um, Lapita Naguaya, whatever her name is, um, she has maybe 5 minutes of screen time. So the screen time is really not a big issue. I do understand some people's perspective when it comes to like the principle of it all, and I see that's the thing. You don't like for them to be having her, which I'm not saying like she's ugly or anything, but for to be playing, what is supposed to be the most beautiful woman in the world, I think that's kind of laughable in a sense, because I'm just like, at least from my perspective and from people I've talked to, I mean, like I'm not starting a war. For being honest, I ain't starting a war over that. But that's my point of view. And and then of course the whole thing about Elliot Page. I'll be honest with you. That it might piss you off. And there's one part. Oh, he says one of the greatest warriors I ever met. Take that as what you want, man. Like you know. And a spoiler plays Robert Pattinson's little brother. Take that as what you want. You know. But we got to get the Oscar, baby. Got to get the Oscar. We got to check the boxes. So I get it. I get it. So, but hey, appreciate everybody checking in. Tell me what you guys thought of the movie down below. And till next time, peace out.